Hello and welcome to the Voice of Todd. I'm Tom, and today we're going to talk about Greenland, the new film starring Gerard Butler. Greenland is a disaster movie, very much like the disaster movies we were flooded with in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's fairly tired genre at this point, I think, but every now and then we get something special. I thought San Andreas back in 2015 was one of those gems, and 6 years on, is it time or another? And does Greenland fit the bill? Let's find out. Short answer, yes. I have a few issues with it. It's very tropey, but it's still a load of disaster-laden fun with characters that I bought into for the most part, and some extra special effects really bring home the epic feel that the story sets out to tell. Before we get any deeper, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, I really do recommend it. It's a very enjoyable film. So go check it out and come back. If not, if you're not bothered about spoilers, thanks for sticking around, but you have been warned. The film is directed by Rock Roman Wog, who directed Snitch and Angel Has Fallen, both films that I really enjoy, and is written by Chris Sparling and stars Gerard Butler, Morena Baccarin, Roger Dale Floyd and Scott Glenn. The synopsis for the film pretty much nails it in a sentence, and is as follows. A family struggles for survival in the face of a cataclysmic natural disaster. What more do you need to know? That's the film. There's actually a bit more that I'd like to say. So if you're interested, stick around and let's talk about my positives and negatives and general takeaways from this film. First, a few notes on the main actors. I'm a big fan of Gerard Butler anyway, but we don't have Gerard Butler playing his stereotypical role of all-American action hero saving the day. He plays family man John Garrity. He's a structural engineer and is currently estranged from his family. This is made very clear, at least to me, in the first 5 minutes of the film. Honestly, I didn't like this. I think Hollywood has a real problem with trying to make fathers good. They have this weird fetish for making fathers terrible or absent or whatever. But this film does actually explain enough to give you an insight into what's going on with them. And Gerard really does play this as a loving father and husband. Despite his failings, he openly accepts them and he wants to do better. For me, as someone who didn't grow up very close to my father at all, I do have a soft spot for when dads are trying to make things right and actually want to be there, and I think that this part of the film is handled brilliantly. Morena Baccarin, of course I love her. She's in Firefly. She's one of my favourite characters in Firefly. She plays Alison Garrity, wife to John, and she's quite good in this. There are moments of the hysterical mother that you would that you would expect in a disaster film. But there's also moments of strength from her too. She's put through some tough situations. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that they play out close to how they probably would in reality, as we're in a situation that hopefully no one's ever going to know. Roger Dale Floyd plays Nathan Garrity. He's John and Alison's son, and he is absolutely fantastic. This kid is going places. He's probably the standout in the film for me. Again, he's put in tough situations, and I always believed how he reacted, how he responded to certain situations. There's key moments in the plot. He is a diabetic, and that becomes a heavy point in this film. And you know, if I'd have heard, diabetic kid, disaster movie, I think it was just being tropey, but this is actually handled really well, and it's a well thought out story, sort of advancement. It's very believable, and it's really well done. He's a great little actor. And finally, I'll touch on Scott Glenn. He's only in it for about 10 minutes. He plays Alison's father, Dale. Again, I totally buy into how he reacts. He's that stubborn old man that you come to expect, but there are moments with him, and specifically Alison, but moments with him and John too, that you just buy into his stubbornness, his anger. It's all justifiable, it all works, and I thought he was a great little addition and a nice distraction to everything else that's unfolding around them. I do want to start with my negative points because I'd rather end on the positives. So let's get into it. It's very tropey, as you would expect with a disaster movie. The story does feel a little forced in places. There are moments where it's clear that it's just a point to progress to the next element of the film. Some of it's a little tenuous, but overall it works. There's only so much you can do when there is a planet-killing meteorite falling into Earth. And while it is explained enough to satisfy me eventually, I really do hate the husband affair trope. It's clear that this is done just to cause tension between John and Alison at the start of the film, and by extension Dale, Alison's father. While the film, it works because of how the interactions are with the characters and the eventual progress that is made. I have serious problems with this always being a thing. I think the film would have had the same impact, at least to me, if John had been the same loving father and husband that he is, but that they were living happily together. This is a disaster movie. You don't need to force tension very early on when it's not really going to get explained in a very succinct way. And as I say, they do well here, but I just think it would be more interesting to take the happy family idea and then have everything that they love and that they're used to and that they're comfortable with destroyed around them as this is all progressing. And the tensions and the shock and the stress that would cause would be far more interesting than already making them having nearly lost each other through divorce and affairs or whatever the hell's going on. But it might just be me. I'm going to get a little bit specific with some of these, and this one specifically is done to progress the story, but I do not understand why John would have to go back to get Nathan's meds. As a diabetic, they clearly need to have his insulin with him. But if I was in that situation, I would spread the vials around. I'd have them in my pockets, I'd have them in other bags. I wouldn't have them all lumped together in a bag that the child is looking after. It just felt stupid. Again, a little bit more specific. It could be seen as a stretch with everything that goes on with Alison and Nathan, that they end up at the same checkpoint. You can explain it, and you can probably explain it much better, and I'm just overthinking. But it did seem a little bit like they were just pushing it all together just to get that part done. And it's a really interesting story how they get separated and what happens when they get separated. It's a really good part of this. So it is only a minor gripe, but I still didn't really buy into that part as much. But that's really it for my negatives. So let's move on to the positives. The first one, wow. The CGI is amazing. The destruction seems pretty spot on with the events and how it would play out. This is meteors falling to Earth from space. We don't know what would happen. We have theories, we've seen things hitting the ocean and stuff, but nothing of this magnitude. And the effects that the meteor has on what's going on around, on how everything looks, fantastic. It's done really well, and the final shots of the film are stunning. Absolutely stunning. So kudos to the special effects team for that. I think the father-son moments between John and Nathan are great. Gerard Butler isn't known for being an amazing actor, but he can certainly knock it out the park when he needs to. And Roger Dale Floyd was, as I say, superb. Absolutely superb. I really bought into their relationship, and those moments were a really great inclusion. I did mention it as a bit of a negative, but the way that they handle Nathan's diabetes, it does work, it makes sense. It isn't just in there to be another plot point, I don't think. Although it clearly is, I think that the reaction with the government and not letting him on the flights is brutal, but is probably how they would operate. The government want to save the best and the fittest of humanity. Anybody with any kind of condition is not going to get on. It is a plot point, it is brutal, but it really worked for me. I think that this plot, while it is a disaster film, very focused on human nature. I don't think anyone acted out of character, even all the events going on in the background. With such a global extinction situation and the panic, the mass hysteria, I can see that good people would do bad things to survive, that bad people would do bad things because they can, and that people are just thinking about themselves and how they can survive, or at least get to their loved ones. Totally buy everything that happens within those realms. I think the pacing is very good. There's constantly things going on either in the background with updates on the disaster or with the main characters. It is 2 hours long, so it's quite a long film, but it held my attention throughout the whole thing. I think it was really done well. And overall, I would recommend this film. It's a very easy watch, it looks amazing, the cast is very strong, and yes, it's tropey. But it does enough to individually stand out as a great example of the modern day disaster movie from start to finish. I hope this does well. It's been released on Amazon Prime here in the UK, that's how I watched it. We'll never know the figures, and I certainly don't need a sequel. But with any disaster film like this, there's always that little niggling thing in my head saying, what would happen next? So if there was a follow-up, if it did do well enough, these are certainly characters and actors that I would enjoy watching again. And if we did get something where they were rebuilding humanity and the struggles that would bring, I would be really interested in that. But as I say, it isn't needed. It's not something that I would advocate for. But it's just an idea that was playing about in my head while I've been thinking about it this week. So in closing, yes, I would recommend this film. It's the perfect disaster film to just lose yourself in on a Saturday night. So grab the popcorn, settle in, because you're in for a great ride. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this review. If you enjoyed it and any of my other content, please do subscribe, hit that like button, share it with whoever you think would be interested in this. There is much more good stuff to come. So I'll see you in the next one.